It lasted 72 seconds. That's all. Just over a minute. And in that time, something reached Earth. Not a message anyone could read. Not a voice. Not a signal designed for understanding. But something structured. Something that behaved as if it came from a source. A single point. A direction. Not random. Not scattered. But focused. It was detected in 1977 by a radio telescope scanning the sky, listening, not transmitting, not sending anything out, just receiving, waiting, because that's what these systems are built to do, to monitor, to detect, to identify signals that don't originate here. Most of the time, there's nothing. Just background noise, cosmic radiation, natural interference, signals that rise and fall without pattern, without structure, without meaning. They appear and disappear without consistency, without repetition, without intention. But this was different. Because it followed a curve, a precise one. The signal didn't spike randomly. It built steadily, gradually increasing in strength, peaking, and then fading. Exactly the way a signal would behave if it came from a fixed point and passed through the telescope's field of view. That detail matters because natural noise doesn't behave that way. Random signals don't create symmetry. They don't follow predictable rise and fall patterns. But this did. And that changes how it's interpreted because structure implies origin. And origin implies source. And source implies something or someone generated it. When the data was reviewed, one of the researchers circled it, marked it, and wrote a single word next to it. Wow. Not as a conclusion, not as proof, but as recognition that something unusual had occurred, something that didn't fit. And that note became the name, the wow signal, because there wasn't another way to describe it. Not with certainty, not with explanation, just acknowledgement that something had been detected that didn't belong. The frequency it appeared on wasn't random either. It aligned with a range associated with hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. A frequency often considered a natural baseline, a place where signals could be placed, if the intention was to be found, because hydrogen exists everywhere, which makes it universal, recognizable, a logical choice for communication, if communication was the goal. But that's where the certainty ends, because the signal never appeared again. Not in the same location, not at the same strength, not on the same frequency. It was detected once and never repeated. And that creates a problem, because science depends on repetition, on verification, on consistency. If something can be observed again, it can be studied, tested, analyzed. But if it happens once and never returns, then everything after that becomes interpretation. There have been attempts to explain it. Natural sources, comets, reflections, interference from Earth-based systems, even passing objects, interacting with existing signals. But none of those explanations fully account for everything. Not the intensity, not the pattern, and not the frequency. Because if it were natural, it should have appeared again, at least once, at least partially, at least something similar. But nothing like it has been recorded since, and that absence is significant, because rare doesn't mean impossible, but unique changes the category entirely, because something that happens once without repetition doesn't follow expected behavior, unless repetition wasn't the purpose, unless it wasn't meant to be ongoing. Some believe it was nothing, a coincidence, a rare alignment of natural signals, creating the appearance of structure. But randomness rarely produces precision, and this was precise. Others believe it was something more, a signal that wasn't meant to continue, only to be detected once, to confirm that it could be, and then stop. If that's the case, then it wasn't communication. Not in the traditional sense. It wasn't a message. It wasn't information. It was presence. A moment, something passing through that happened to be observed and then moved on. Because signals travel. They don't stay in one place. They move. They cross paths. They intersect with detection systems for brief moments, and then they're gone, which means this may not have been sent to Earth specifically. It may have simply passed through at the exact moment the telescope was aligned, and that alignment is extremely rare, because detection requires precision, position, timing, a narrow window where everything lines up. And when it does, it doesn't last. 72 seconds. That's all it took for something to be seen, and then disappear, leaving behind only data, a spike, a pattern, a note, and a question that hasn't been answered. Not definitively, not completely, because whatever it was, it didn't stay, it didn't repeat, and it didn't explain itself, which means everything that follows is interpretation, analysis, theory, attempts to fit something unknown into known systems. But if it doesn't fit, then the system itself may not be complete. Because not everything that exists is understood. Not everything that is detected is explained. Some things remain unresolved because resolution requires information. And in this case, there isn't enough. Just one moment, one detection, one signal, and silence. which may be the most significant part. Because if something can appear with that level of structure and then never appear again, it suggests limitation, not necessarily in the signal, but in the detection. Because if it happened once, it can happen again, just not in a way we're able to observe. Which means the question isn't just what it was, it's how many others have occurred without being seen, without being recorded, without being noticed at all. Because detection doesn't define existence, it only confirms presence when conditions allow it. And those conditions don't happen often, which means what we see may only be a fraction, a small portion of something much larger. Something that isn't constant, something that isn't directed, but something that exists outside the limits of what we regularly observe, and occasionally crosses into it just long enough to be noticed and then gone again.